Hello, welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 40, a podcast where we discuss books, genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm A.R. DeClerc.
And I'm Paulina Woods.
Today we are doing a review, but not of a book. We are doing a review of a movie that, who was it that posted the trailer? Does anyone remember? Amy posted the trailer. How did you find it?
My husband watches tons and tons of movie trailers on YouTube, and he showed it to me. So then I showed it to you guys.
Okay, so this is a movie called I Am Dragon. If you're not listening or watching the podcast on YouTube, I am showing the cover. The tagline says, Game of Thrones meets Beauty and the Beast. I'm going to immediately disagree with that. But this this movie looks to have been produced in Russia. It's at least in Russian, and we watched the English dub version, and kind of went out on a limb here to I bought the DVD without actually ever seeing the movie, but I'm glad that I picked this up. I'm really awful with doing kind of impromptu synopses. Amy, did you want me to try to tackle it, or do you want to take it?
I can probably give everybody a general overview of what it's about. So,
right, because I'm going to forget stuff.
In a medieval-ish setting, there was a village beset by dragons, so every year they sacrificed their young virgin women to these dragons, and one day during the sacrifice, the beloved of a warrior was taken, so he followed her to the dragon's lair, and as the story goes, he slayed the dragon after he found that she was already dead. So fast forward some odd years later, they don't really say how long, but the Dragon Slayer has a grown grandson, so I'm going to go with like 60 years maybe, ish. Have to sacrifice their virgins because they believe that all the dragons are dead. So the sacrificial rite has become a marriage rite. And so Princess, well, she's actually a Duchess. Duchess Miroslava is being wed to the grandson of the Dragon Slayer, Igor. Boat, and they basically push her out in the middle of this lake, and then he's supposed to like pull her in with this rope to symbolize like, you know, her coming into his family or whatever. And he has his warriors sing the Dragon Slayer song to honor his grandfather. Unfortunately, little did they know, that singing the Dragon Slayer song is actually going to call the dragon. So dragon appears, kidnaps Duchess Miroslava, and carries her away. And thus begins the tale. So it's the story of Miroslava finds herself kidnapped, basically, on a deserted island in the middle of the sea, with only a dragon and a weird raccoon-looking creature. Then that's about all there really is to say without giving away what we're going to talk about later, but that's the basicness of the story.
Yeah, that's the opener. And there's going to be spoilers. There's spoilers all over the fucking place because
Sparkly
we're going to talk
spoilers.
about this.
That's right.
Right. So let's talk about...
Let me say one thing, though, guys. If you saw the movie Wanted, which was a very popular movie that had Morgan Freeman in it, and it had Angelina Jolie in it, and it had James McAvoy in it. It had a lot of, like, bullet zinging. It was like a...
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Assassin movie? Okay.
Is that the one where they could bend
yes.
the bullets? Okay.
Yes. Okay, so the director of that movie is the director of this movie.
Really?
So and he's pretty popular in Russia, I guess, but his last movie here in the States didn't do all that great.
Okay.
But they were hyping this movie as like his big comeback movie or whatever. So just give everybody a down low on that. So if you hear people talking about, oh, it's so-and-so's directorial, comeback, that's what they're talking about.
I had no idea.
Okay. All right, Elsa, what do you got to say about it?
Okay, so I want to kind of drill down to the characters. So on the back of the DVD, it does say Princess Mira.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, she's got an older sister named Yara, and they call each other Yaroslava and Miroslava. I think that has something to do with their naming convention in Russian.
I think so.
So her name is Mira. She is a princess, and at the very beginning of the movie, you definitely get the sense that she's kind of spoiled, kind of naive, and kind of selfish. And I didn't like her at the beginning of the movie. And then she's kidnapped, and the first thing the dragon does is put her in like this pit, and she doesn't really understand why she's in this pit. And then she meets a man who is separated from her by like a stone wall, who doesn't remember his own name, and they named him, was it Amir or Arman?
Armand?
I don't think there was a D. I think it was just Arman. So she
it's kind of hard to
him,
tell with the accents, but it could be either way.
Right. So we watched, I should say that we watched the English dubbed version. So if you buy the DVD, you have the option of watching it in Russian with English subtitles, or if you want, you can watch it with English dub. I saw some reviews that were giving the movie 1-star review because they opted to rent it digitally through Amazon. They only had the option to watch it in dub or subtitled, and apparently they can't read and watch movies at the same time, so they gave it a 1-star review. Anyway, so she meets this guy, names him Arman, and he claims to be a prisoner of the dragon too, and he's really naive about things. So she's kind of injured from the dragon claws, carrying her from her boat and then up to this island, and he gives her this salve to put on all of her scratches. She was dropped in a pit, poked by claws, so she takes her her gown down her shoulder so that she can put salve on her shoulder, and she's like, don't look at me. And he's like, why can't I look at you? I can look at birds. Why can't I look at you? So he's really kind of naive to the way things work. And when he doesn't agree to help her escape, which is what the only thing that she wants to do once she realizes she's in this dragon's cave, she calls him a coward and doesn't want anything to do with him. There's actually like a space in the wall where there's enough room for a rock, so she sticks a rock in there so she doesn't have to see him anymore. But then this is where Mira really started to grow on me. She has really, really long hair, super long hair, like down to the floor.
Yep, that's
longer,
exactly the point where I started having a little respect.
Right. She cut off her own hair to braid a rope to climb out of this pit. And I'm like, you go, girl. It's like, that's awesome. If we were talking a normal damsel in distress movie, she would have just sat there. She wouldn't have done much of anything. But she cut off her own hair to make a rope to get out. And I was like, that is awesome. It was ultimately fruitless, but awesome. I think Arman comes back and apologizes. And that's what I think this is when they actually introduce each other. So she's like, people shake hands, and he explains that he doesn't remember his name and he doesn't know what it is to be a civilized person, and they shake hands. And then the dragon comes back and attacks. I don't want to dominate this whole thing, Amy. And that's when she realizes that what was she doing? She was hitting the wall where Arman had gone because she thought that
he ran off, and so she thought the dragon got him. So she picked up a big rock and she was hitting the wall trying to bust through, and she broke a hole. And so she's like, oh, now there's a hole from the side of the cave where she was at into where he was at. So she went in, and she was able to follow this pathway now that was open that led out to a very tall precipice.
Yeah, it
And
was
she
the whole
out.
cavern out there.
Yeah.
It wasn't another section. It was the whole cavern. So he had free reign of the whole cavern.
She realized he was not as much of a prisoner as he had led her to believe, because she walked basically freely out of this cavern and onto this really high precipice on this island, and was basically overlooking the sea at night. So she immediately realized, which that's the thing about this character too that got me, is from the very beginning of the movie, you think she's stupid. She is really good at tricking you into thinking she's stupid. I think at one point during the movie, I'm like, okay, so girl knows how to play this game. She knows exactly how to manipulate people to think she's dumb, and then she gets the upper hand. And it happened over and over and over again in the movie, where I thought, oh my God, this she is so stupid. But everything she was doing, she had already planned 10 steps ahead why she was doing all of these little things. So yeah, Mira was more than just a pretty face. I thought she had a very lighthearted character. I thought she was a person who was really looking for like the magic and joy in life, and she was kind of tired. Like you see the tension between her and her older sister in the beginning, and it's because older sister is about duty and responsibility and serious, and she's like, I just want to play with I don't understand why my dragon toy won't fly. Like literally that's the most important thing to her at the moment. So their priorities are like way on a different level, which is good though, because you think she's vapid and you think she's shallow, but she's actually really, really intelligent. And I liked how they did the flip on you, because when she cut her hair off, okay, so anybody who's a nerd like me has seen Naruto. My daughter and I were watching it together the other day, and the main character, Sakura, was very proud of her long, flowing, beautiful hair, which happened to be pink because it's anime, but whatever. So anyway, there's one point where she's deep in this ninja battle, and the bad guy has her by the hair, and she just cuts it off. And it's like, in that moment, you're like, you have a sense of respect for this person who cared so much about the hair, and now it's gone. I felt the same way about Mira when she took that rock and she's just like, cut, and you could tell she'd been growing her hair since birth. She'd never cut it. It was all the way down to her ankles, probably, long enough to make a rope with.
Right.
She didn't give it a second thought. She just chopped it off. So I was like, okay. Then I started being more respectful of her as a character, and kind of watching her a little more closely, because I thought, oh great, she's just going to cry, and then, that's going to be all she does. And then.
Right. So we're so used to women just being a plot device and not a driving character, that she really kind of took me by surprise, because so Arman claims that he reveals that he's the dragon because she slips off this cliff and he saves her life.
He tells her, stop backing up, but she's so mad. You know how sometimes, and I'm the same kind of person, like you get so mad, like all you can do is like yell and walk at the same time. Like that's what she's doing. She's yelling and walking backwards, and he's like, stop, and she just keeps going, and she falls off.
Right.
And then he has to reveal himself.
So yeah, he jumps after her, catches her, which that scene was actually visually stunning.
Yes,
like the scene where he caught her. We can come back to that in a second. But he saves her life as the dragon, and then they fall into the water underneath because it was a high up whatever. And like they washed up on the shore. He turned back into a man. Nice to look at, by the way. And
yes.
She was going to leave him. She was like,
actually, she was going to bash his head in with a rock. The first thing she was going to do, she picked up a boulder and she's like, I'm going to bash your brains out. And she literally was like, and then the sea started taking, she's like, okay, well, we'll let the sea kill you. That way I'm not a murderer. And she's got the rock like, okay, I won't murder you. I'll let the sea murder you. So he starts to like float back out into the water, and you're like.
Right, but then that weird raccoon critter started whining like, like a pet does when his master's
it's like pawing in the
water, like
pull him up out of the water. And she keeps seeing the water like splash over his nose, and she knows he's going to drown if she doesn't do something. So She gets a little soft-hearted.
And gets him out, but then she's like trying to drag him up the side of a mountain.
Naked. Talk about some rock
naked.
Dude's going to be like abrasions all over. Because she's literally, like, she probably weighs 100 pounds, and dude probably weighs a good 200. And she's trying to drag this guy, like, up this solid rock cliff by the arm. You're like, this is so not going to work.
And that's why the critter brought her. So, like, during the wedding ceremony, she was, like, decked out with, like, layers and layers of fabric. But when she gets to the dragon cave, she's basically in her underdress. So it's just a single layer of white fabric. So the creature raccoon thingy brings her what was her outer dress. So it's this very heavy fabric. And first she's like, what do you want me to do with that? She's talking to this raccoon like he's another person. She's like, what do you want me to do with that? So she ends up dragging Arman up the side of this mountain cliff in her old wedding dress so that he doesn't get scraped to bits.
Right. So she gets him up there, and then she gets him up to, like, there's a flat part where she manages to get him, and she, like, rolls him over and lays him down, and then she's like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And does it start to rain at that point? I think it starts to rain at that point.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay.
She actually, she's like, we can't be exposed to the elements. What did she do? She knocked over, like, this sailing mast ship thing.
Well, yeah, a bunch of ships wrecked up against the shore. So she went down there, and she was at first she found a big piece of oilcloth from the sail. She was, like, holding it over herself. Then she realized, like, the whole sail was there, so she dragged that whole thing. Imagine how heavy that was, because wet oilcloth has to weigh hundreds of pounds. She dragged it all the way up the side of the mountain, and she rigged up this pretty fancy, like, Bedouin-type tent out of all this oilcloth from this wrecked ship, and to keep him dry. And then she does something really nice, because she realizes he's got, like, a big gash in his back where he hit the rocks or whatever. So she goes and she picks some of the plants and makes a paste, same kind of paste he gave her to put on her wounds, and she packs the wounds with the plant paste and then covers it up with more of the old wedding dress. And then she kind of just lays down like, oh my God, okay, now I'm tired.
Right. So this is where we learn that Mira is not a heartless bitch.
Right. She does care.
She takes care of him. And we learn that he struggles with keeping the dragon kind of contained, or he says that anytime she touches him, that's when the dragon comes out.
And he says that he blacks out when the dragon comes out. So when he comes back to himself, the only thing that he knows is the few moments of transference from the dragon to the human of what the dragon has done. So he can't say you'll be safe when the dragon comes, because he has no control over that personality or part of him. Right.
So I thought their little romance, like, so this whole movie, it's not rated because it didn't come out in the United States, but definitely I think it would be PG. Maybe PG-13, just because there's, like, dragon violence and
there's booty.
But
probably
there is booty. You see naked man booty. But the Game of Thrones reference?
No.
Not at all. It is high fantasy.
Game of Thrones if it was put on by peeps. So imagine
there's no rating,
and they're all peeps,
and nobody dies.
No, not at all.
Nobody dies.
The only possible connection between Game of Thrones and this movie is the setting, because it's like a village type setting, and a dragon.
Medieval.
Like, those are the two most broad.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast is kind of spot on, but
Beauty and the Beast is okay.
Not Game of Thrones.
No.
I haven't read the books, but I've seen the show. So yeah, they have this really sweet romance, and we were messaging each other while we were watching the movie, and I started calling out story beats. So I'm like, oh, this is they're falling in love, and oh, they're gonna have their black moment here, and
We're like, montage!
Montage, music montage. It was so sweet though that like
It was.
just how they fell in love with each other at the beginning of like I don't want to call it by its beat name, but like she says at one point that you give flowers to someone you love. So towards the end of their falling in love montage, he sets off fireworks, which he calls, what is it, sky blossoms or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so he gives her those, and she knows she can't touch him, but she grabs his sleeve to hold his hand. I'm like, oh, it's so very cute.
Yeah, it was. And I'll be honest with you. So, like, you have this really fresh, very rare to get this feeling when you're watching a movie or reading a romance book nowadays, because everything comes off so jaded. You know what I mean? Everything comes off so jaded and so sharp. And so, like, if somebody is acting like they acted in that movie, a lot of times you'd be like, oh my God, that is too sugary sweet. Like, that just can't be possible. But it was so sweet. Like, they were so fresh and, like, untouched by the world. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they really were not these awful, jaded people who had all this baggage that they were carrying around. They were literally unfettered, easygoing, slid right into this relationship together. It was so nice to watch because it was so different than anything that you see lately in TV and on movies and in books.
right.
There wasn't even
Arman,
really a hint of darkness at this point.
Arman had some doubt.
Right.
Because he was dealing with literally an inner dragon.
Right.
And like I said, that dark moment that they had, he found her, like, the ship that she had been preparing to leave in, but she, at that point, he didn't know this, but she at that point had kind of abandoned stocking
right.
her
She had a bag
departure.
packed and things all ready to go, but she had already in her mind, because she was talking to the raccoon looking thing, you know, she's like, well, I put all this together before I knew who he was, and I knew that I was going to be safe, and I, you know, and this whole time, because we have not talked about Igor, but this whole time, Igor has been rowing his butt with his helmsman across the sea, searching for his bride-to-be, because according to his grandfather, if your true love loves you enough, her love would light your way to the Dragon's Island.
Right.
Through the
Otherwise,
thick fog that shrouds the island from everyone.
Right. And if you don't have a true love on the island, you will never find it, and you'll probably die.
His thing is, oh, well, her light hasn't shined my way to the island because she's dead. There's absolutely no way that she could love me because I'm super awesome.
Right.
She just must be dead. And it's like, the only person talking any sense on this boat is the helmsman. He kept trying to say, we go forward, we continue on, you know, we search in a grid pattern, we'll eventually find it. No, we need to turn around. Obviously, she's dead. You're giving up already?
Right, and he got his ass handed to him by the helmsman. He's like, "You're a pansy."
Yeah.
Because
he's like, I run this ship now.
I swore your grandfather I'd protect the family name and blah blah. I'm like, oh yeah, helmsman. Whew. But so they had their dark moment, and they had their falling out. So she took her ship and she left. She used one of the fireworks to be found by
She basically
Igor.
rode right up to their ship. Like, literally,
right. She's like, here I am. I escaped myself. And then she's like, thank you for rescuing me. I'm like, what?
That's the point where I'm like, she did not just say thank you for rescuing me. And then I'm like, oh, baby girl knows how to play the game.
She's playing the game. She's playing the game.
She is like, oh, I'm a poor little princess. Thank you for rescuing me. Take me home because I'm going to kick your ass when we get there.
She told them that the dragon was dead. She protected Arman by telling them that he was dead. Otherwise, they would have continued and probably hunt him down and killed him.
Right, correct. She told them Arman was dead, that there was no dragon, that the dragon was dead, and that she had escaped the island. And that was obviously to protect him. Even though he sort of broke her heart a little bit. I felt like, she was like, okay, so I'm just going to go on about my life and do what I got to do. And play the part that I was supposed to play before all this happened. So they all roll back home, and Arman's left alone on the island. And then what happens, Elle?
So they go through with another wedding, which is exactly the same as the first, omitting the dragon chant that summons the dragon. So,
they don't
smart,
take that chance again.
Smart move on that part. But she gets halfway across the lake for this symbolic, changing family to family. And she's like, no, I can't do this. I love Arman and I love the dragon. And so she sits up, and I keep wanting to call him Igor just because I've seen Young Frankenstein a little too much. Igor was like, no, you can't do this. And he tries to pull her in. And I remember the part,
start pulling, and we're like,
she takes the rope off the boat so he can't pull her in. I'm like, you go, girl. And
we're both like, if this dragon don't show up right now, Chick's ended up in the nut house. Somebody's gonna have to swim out to the middle of this lake, and they're gonna have to pull her back in. They're gonna put her away.
She screams, I love the dragon. And then I'm like, they're not gonna know what you're talking about. They don't know he's a man.
Like,
what?
Talking about? Like, they're all talking to each other with these big old, like, shocked looks on their faces. Like, you love the dragon. What is she talking about? So then, like,
but she
literally wait while she's standing there with her arms out in the middle of this lake.
Also, like, they cut back and forth between Arman and Mira, and I think he jumped off that cliff for the purpose of ending his life.
I agree.
But when she started chanting the dragon song, that is, when he transformed and finally
you gotta
showed
go back
up.
Okay, so there's a part that we've left out, and this is the part about why Armand does not want to be a dragon in the first place. So Armand was a boy who lived on the island and loved his father deeply. His father was a dragon. And one day his father came home carrying a woman, and then it goes off to show you what dragons do with their human brides. So they basically drop them on this altar, and they burn them to cinders with dragon fire, and from the cinders is born a new human-dragon hybrid baby. So you have to sacrifice the mother in order to have a child. So Armand, the minute he became a dragon, he got all these memories from all the previous incarnations of dragons and all his ancestor dragons. And he said, my father was a monster. I don't want to be a monster. And he felt more kin to human than to the dragon. So he was constantly warring with his dragon half to remain human as long as he could. And I kind of think if this was a book and I was reading it, I would think that Armand's dragon was almost a little bit like feral at this point and crazy because it had never been interacted with before on any kind of level.
Right.
Like, you could bond with your dragon and you could, like, have some interaction with it to where you weren't completely freaked out and scared of it all the time. It might not be so animalistic all the time and, like,
and
eager to
individually hurt. If Arman had embraced his dragon versus trying to shove him in a little corner of his mind, he may have actually been able to control the dragon or be aware when the dragon's doing the dragon things.
And when he put her on that boat and sent her away, he told her what dragons do to their mates. And he said, this is why I cannot be with a human woman. I can't have a human mate because this is what happens to them. Well, she has obviously decided she doesn't care about that when she's calling for him. And he jumps off that cliff and becomes the dragon. And then you see him come through the town and he picks her up. And he flies away with her.
Right, so it looks like the dragon, at this point, the dragon's kind of flying on instinct and puts her on the altar, and he was going to, like, char the living crap out of her. But she kisses him. She kisses the dragon, and the dragon doesn't know how to handle it.
Right, he kind of backs up a couple steps, and he's got these big old eyes like, okay.
What the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because the Arman has only treated him with fear and loathing, and then Mira kisses him. So, and she says, I love you to the dragon. And she,
right. She says, I don't care if you're human. I don't care if you're a dragon. I don't care if you're a human and a dragon.
right.
All I want is for you to love me, or is for me to be able to love you. And so then the dragon very sweetly puts its head in her lap, and she just starts kind of like petting him, and she's like, okay, just stay like this for a while and let me get used to you in this form. So like she's understanding like this is also part of Arman. So she has to accept this part of him if she wants to be with him. It's kind of like that's what I got out of that whole moment.
Right, and he needs to accept that part of him too, otherwise
right.
it caused more problems. It was so sweet. And at the end, like the beginning, the opening was like a shadow puppet type of scene, and at the end they go to like he was narrating the whole story the whole time, and at the end he was wrapping up the story, and then you hear a little kid's voice asking where baby dragons come from. So it's revealed that they have a daughter and they're living on the island. It's so cute.
It was, and they were obviously extremely happy together, and somehow figured out a way to have babes without charring
without burning
well done steak.
They just did it the old-fashioned way, like humans do.
They actually, though, if you watch till the end, because we watched to the end, so they put the daughter to bed, and Arman puts the shadow puppets away, and then he's like, okay, are you ready? And she's like, yep. So they go out up onto the precipice, the very top of the island, and he turns into the dragon, and then she climbs up on the dragon and gets on the back and holds onto his horns, and they fly off on the wind. And then it shows you they go up all the way above the clouds to where like the air is so cold, the fire goes out and he becomes a man again, and that's when the magic happens.
Well, I think that may have been more symbolic, but throughout the whole movie there's a lot of gorgeous imagery.
Correct.
Like there's a scene where he's trying to show her the wind, and so he releases rose petals so that she can see the roses flying on the wind. The whole movie is visually stunning.
Favorite scenes is he goes out and he picks her some flowers. So he goes out and he picks her these wildflowers because she had told him that when you love someone or when you care about someone, you can give them flowers to tell them how you feel. So he goes out and picks her some flowers, and he comes back through the opening to where she's sleeping, and he has the flowers in his hand, and all of a sudden the dragon tries to come out and he burns the flowers to cinders. And then he drops them on the ground. And it's like, oh, that is such good imagery because that's exactly what he is afraid of happening. Is she is basically, the flowers are a symbol for her and their purity and beauty, and he's afraid he's going to burn her to cinders too. So I'm like, wow, that was really well done in like 22 seconds worth of footage. You just told me an entire story about this character.
Right. It really added to the depth of the characters so that you really enjoyed watching their progress, because Arman had to learn to trust himself and trust her through the whole thing, and she had to kind of grow up through the whole thing. So yeah, I am very happy about this movie.
I agree. Very good. I think we made a good choice.
Well, normally when you get movies, they're trying to cover all their bases. So it's trying to be an action movie, and it's trying to be a romance, and it's trying to be a mystery, and you get so much thrown in that.
If this was Game of Thrones, let me just throw this out here. So Igor and Arman would have gone up against each other, and they both would have died in battle with a battle axe buried in each other's skull, and Mira probably would have gone off with the helmsman to live happily ever after.
I want to bring up that Igor was going to throw, was it a spear?
Yes.
At Mira and the dragon when she had made her choice, and the helmsman clocked his ass out. I'm like, go. Because Igor was such a coward that he couldn't concede defeat.
Right. And then what did you think about what Mira's father said at the end of the movie? Because he's watching her fly off with this dragon, and he's like, go, daughter, your heart has made its choice. Most dads would be like, it's crazy. Just flew off with the dragon. Like, what? But he was like, your heart's made its choice. Like, I don't know. I thought, too, and maybe this is just my mind making machinations because, but I thought that sister had a thing for Igor.
It was either
sister was upset that she wasn't the one crossing the lake in the boat.
It was either Igor or she had a thing for the helmsman, because if you notice, the helmsman referenced something that the older sister said.
Yeah, so I don't know
So
for
it's
sure.
one of those.
But there was some, yeah. She was upset that sis was getting married, or not appreciating the fact that she was getting married. Like, sister didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal. And they threw it in her face that she's a spinster.
Right. The older sister was upset that the younger sister wasn't taking it as seriously as she thought she should.
Right. And I was also reading into it that she wanted Igor for herself, but that's probably just me being.
No, I think she had a thing for the helmsman. But my point was that with all these mainstream movies that come out there, it's very rare that you get a movie that is a legit romance.
Mm-hmm.
The whole purpose of the movie is to get these two together. So.
And they got a happily ever after. There was no if, ands, or buts. There was nothing that could possibly come along that it hinted at that, oh, dark times are ahead. None of it. It was, you got a happily ever after, the freaking end.
Right.
Perfect.
Right. So, so I'm very happy with that. Because even, like, I've noticed that there's not as many romantic comedies that are coming out lately. It's like the romance movie genre seems to be dying down or getting not as much attention as it normally did. Maybe they think that they're wrapping everything into existing, like, adventure movies, and that's good enough. But no, this is a legit romance. You need to tell your husband to be quiet.
He's watching the spoiler for Game of Thrones, and then coming to tell me that what we thought was the actual truth was the actual truth, and we were vindicated. Vindicated.
You were right. So woohoo. So if we had to rate this from 0 to 5 stars, what would you give it?
I say at least 4.7 stars.
I don't know. I'm a full 5 stars.
The only reason I don't go 5 stars is because I wish the dubbing was okay. The dubbing was okay. And granted, I watched it through your computer, through my computer. So, but I think for me, the dubbing could have been better. I think that was the only thing. Her voice annoyed me, but it was because it was obvious that it was dubbed. Does that make sense? Like, to me, it didn't fit her character. So every time she talked, I just was like a little bit off. But other than that, I think that was the only thing that I didn't like about the movie. Everything else was so good because it was exactly everything it had to be. It didn't try to be anything else. It didn't try to, I mean, aside from what the box says about Game of Thrones and blah, 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 it didn't try to be Game of Thrones. It didn't try to be anything else. It was simply this really sweet, really well put together, visually stunning. Like, the special effects for this movie were just fabulous. I think the dragon is on par with Dragonheart, which is one of the best.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one.
Not
which is one of the
any
best
of the
dragon movies ever made. But
wrong. Dragon Slayer is the best dragon movie ever.
My husband says wrong. Dragon Slayer is the best dragon movie ever made. But visually, I liked Dragonheart visually, the dragon, and so I thought this was on par with that. So yeah, I'd go 4.7, maybe. I mean, probably even 4.8 stars. Just the dubbing threw me off a little bit. I think that was the only thing. I would watch it subtitled. I'm not going to take off
stars because it wasn't done in English.
No, I don't care about that. It just kind of threw me off a little bit because the voice that they chose just didn't quite line up in my head about how the character would sound. But that's my own personal thing. That's not anything against the movie.
Okay, so that was our review or commentary on I Am Dragon. You can find it on Amazon.
Good. Y'all should watch it. If you like movies, it don't make you cry. It's not an ugly cry. It's a happy movie. You'll finish it like you don't need a tissue. It's good.
Unless you're happy crying.
Unless you're happy crying. It's not even
I'll put a link.
A happy, joyous. It's just like that was really sweet. Like that's
like,
that movie was really sweet.
I will put a link to the movie in the comments. Like I said, if you want to listen to it in English, you'll have to buy the DVD. But if you're okay with reading your movies, you can rent it from Amazon.
Google Play has it too. I looked it up yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, Google Play has it too. So this is the part of the podcast where we mentioned that tomorrow we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary as a podcast. So Focus on Fantasy Romance is doing this for a full year, and this is episode 40. To celebrate, we're doing a giveaway. So you'll want to check our website and our other social media for news or information on how you can join the giveaway. I know that I contributed a paperback version of my award-winning novel. So go to focusonfantasyromance.wordpress.com for more information. But that is all I've got. If you've got any closing remarks, anybody?
Nope, I think we said what we got to say.
All right. I just copied and pasted the wrong thing into the chat, so I'm not going to do the introduction I want to do. Thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, please like, comment, and share. This has been episode 40. Good night.
Good night.